So in episode 1, we created this liquid random C data generator for our synthetic data generation pipeline. In episode 2, we had added tool groups as additional data type for our C data generation package. In this episode, we are actually using the package for the first time. One request that we have received a lot of times is audio tool calling as one request for our LFM audio series that was not supported previously. And here in this episode, I want to show you how we can actually build our own audio to function calling dataset very quickly with the tool that we built in the previous 2 episodes. All right, so just to show you, 20 minutes ago, we published this liquid random dataset and liquid random package, and specifically with the tool groups as additional C data types. So we can just sample tool groups, print the domain, how many tools we have here, and the variations and so on. So this is enough. We also added, of course, the limitations, and that we may address it in the future. So we'll use it. So what I do in the prompt, basically in the going back to the terminal, I created a new folder. So if you go show the parent, the working directory, we see that we are in the liquid random. I created a new folder, example audio, where we just use the tool, the C data generation tool, to implement a pipeline. So what we do is just create a new Claude.md file, because it's the first time we create a repo. I usually work with a Claude.md. Later on plans, I typically use other MD files. Example scripts and Python modules on using liquid random as for a synthetic audio to function tool calling dataset. Liquid random. So because we just published liquid random 20 minutes ago, going back to the browser, 22 minutes now ago, this is not in the training data of Claude or any large language model. So it's like beyond the knowledge cutoff. So what we do instead, we just copy paste the entire thing. Probably we don't need to copy paste the entire thing. We probably only need to copy the tool section. So actually this thing we can cut off maybe. This one as well, but should be good and go and just copy paste. We could just have it in this is crossed out. That's interesting. I think this is how it's rendered. Scientific tool groups, perfect actually. This is perfect. Writing tool. No, this is great actually. This is great. Because we may need actually the jobs and the personas actually to add more diversity as well. So it's not just the tool things that we need. So example script on Python models on using liquid random for synthetic audio to tool calling data generation. The task instruction. Create a Python script or package or module that generates synthetic data of the form system prompt with tool definitions, audio input, of a user speaking a question or command, assistant response with just text or tool called was text. Just text. Do we want to make it multi-turn or not? Why not? Why not go directly multi-turn? Because we also generated tool groups to have actually a multi-turn conversation. Repeated audio we don't want the audio speak back the assistant. We just, for now, just to execute the tool. We don't want to speaking back. This is probably the we will add in the future. Let's just let's say have a audio input and a text only LLM in a way. It does function calling and provides the text. We can just transcribe it or some text to speech it and so on. And later on, we may add additional stuff. Audio is a user turn, basically. This is user turn in the form of audio input. Assistant respond, user turn. User turn with audio input. Boom, 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 boom. Dot, dot, dot. Maybe multi-turn, multiple turns of per conversation, e.g. 2 to 5 turns. So it's overall great. So this is just what we want. We have the liquid random in the package, and seeding the random sample. Use the liquid random persona function to make the user request tailored to the background persona. And the liquid random tool function with random tool groups and inject tool definitions. Get 1, 2, 3 tool groups per sample. And drop 0 to 3 random tools, 0 to 2 random tools. If not, if tool list would not be empty. Let's say we drop 2, 3. Let's drop 1 to 3 tables. So this, because we had in the past these issues that all tool groups are always of size 3, so they should drop, and also add multiple tool groups. So kind of we have like a larger set of diversity in the number of tool groups that we have access to here. So 10 on average, like 3, 6, 10 or something on average. Should be good. We can modify this. So we have a persona that asks a question, tool groups questions. We generate seeding the sample. This is enough. Let's also add like maybe a couple of headlining and then like the process. Using an LLM via OpenRouter, we first generate a full text conversation. Includes already the tool calls. And every turn, and all turns. And our user and assistant. Make sure in the prompting a request we add the user turn will be converted to audio. That's very simple. That's not very long language. This doesn't make sense, long language, because you're very concise when you speak. You don't blah, 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 give a markdown input. Language, no special symbols or special characters, etc. This is garbage. Make sure that in the prompt we turn the user into comitatus, not very long language, no special characters, etc., etc., and add filler words to make it more natural. Again, garbage. After we generate session, we call the LLM again, but this time to check the quality. Specifically want to check that the tool calls are correct. Yes, tool rejected. That there are no hallucinated arguments in the tool calls. E.g., this is very important. Let's add the example afterwards. And to conclude the list, to say we have make sure the tool calls correct, that there are no hallucinated arguments in tool calls, and the user terms are appropriate for audio. Yeah. How it does it with JSON and so on, I don't care. It will figure out anyway. Example of hallucinated arguments. Location. No, that's not what I mean. So there's one typical example of when you use large language model for synthetic data generation around tool calling. You see that thing called hallucinated arguments. User prompt set me a reminder set me a reminder to call John tomorrow at 3 p.m. Assistant calls set reminder with user contact John, time zone PST exactly. Issue. The time zone is hallucinated. Make sure such information are either specified by the user or 2 not included in the tool call, or 3 specified in the system prompt or somewhere else in the previous conversation. Great, that's great, because yeah, as I mentioned, like from experience, I can talk here only, or can talk quite experienced. This happened quite a lot. So just make sure that this is checked. So we generate a conversation, we make sure that this has tool calls in there, and then also one other thing that we wanna include here is additional randomization. Even with the process discussed above, we will most likely see some bias, e.g. tool, model, user request. Always the very first in the list, or every user turn asks for a tool call. One other thing that we should actually include here is that tool calls should be implemented. Yeah, I mean, we should check it anyway manually afterwards. That's a good thing. I'm not sure how it will handle this. I think Cloud will handle it actually. Every user has a tool call. To avoid this, we will do the following. first is shuffle the tool list before, every time we use it for the generation of the conversation, as well as the we use it for generation. That's a good enough. The shuffle the tool list. In the saved example, we should keep the original tool names, the original order. Two is we should inject random user request, unrelated user request assistance response without tool call. Turns into constraint to make it more natural and less sparse to assume everything. Exactly, this is what we want. So we want to generate, e.g. you may want to have a separate generation step where we generate a queue and a pair without tool in the scope. Again, use liquidrandom to seed the QA generation pair. Whatever from the liquidrandom it wants to use, I don't care. It will anyway. Like this documented there, should work good to go. So what do we have? We want to have stuff. So we did everything so far. So we generated the conversation. We have this thing using the LLM. We first generate the full conversation, and afterwards we generate the conversation, the qual check. So I think that should be enough. The only step missing is conversion to audio. And to ensure the data quality, we'll first do it fully with text and add the audio, conversion to audio. Conversion to audio. We will add the conversion to audio later on. Save in format. Should save generated data conversations as Parquet files. With the format, I don't care about the format, Claude should come up with it. We should generate with the Parquet as Parquet files. Have a text only folder, stores the text only data, as well as audio. That stores the audio. Audio folder that stores the conversation, including the audio of the user turn. Note, since we are implementing the audio conversion later, for now we can just save in the later. The audio folder should be empty. Should be empty now. Inspection. Include a script that allows human in the loop inspection of the generated conversations. That's all I'm asking. Parallelization is actually interesting. LLM generation. Again, I'll probably use OpenRouter for this. Let's go to OpenRouter AI. What model do they have here? Trinity. I don't care about these models. I want the... Let's use some of the Quen models. They should be good enough. I think this is super cheap. Why not? And they have, again, the quick starting guide. We have the OpenAI Python. And we just copy it. Good enough. Bam. That's all. Important. Use concurrent with batch size. CLI argument. Pick async or thread pool. Whatever you like. We just put this everything in a markdown code block, and you can assume the env-var OpenRouter API is set and available for the script. That's good. It uses this small Quen V model. That's good enough. It has the liquid stuff. One thing that we should also add there, maybe on the very top, we are using UV for dependency, for packaging. Package and dependency management up. That's good enough. Let's open a new tab. Cloud. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. And implement Claude. And let's go into plan mode, because why not? It's from scratch. It needs to implement stuff. It needs to explore the code base. I don't like this actually. Like it should go with this. Don't explore the code base. It's empty. It's empty. This is always the same, you know. You create a new folder, empty. He wants to explore it. It does go actually one directory up. Again, it doesn't. So this is a very poor instruction following. It actually looks into the. It doesn't read the. It's interesting. Okay, it didn't read the README. It just went directly into the folder above and read the code source code directly. I think the README should be enough, to be honest. It said it already has the context. If it would take longer to explore and list all of the files and project structure, I would just... It actually should be standalone. It shouldn't be dependency. Hey, this is actually... I like this should be a standalone folder and project. Do not modify the parent dir stuff. Yeah, that's a bit annoying. I think that's I observed this when using Cloud Code already before. Like when you go into a subfolder, it already has the context from the parent directory there. Not too bad. I think if you go into like a big project and it needs context from a folder and a project above, therefore it makes sense. For this kind of use cases, there probably would have made more sense to create a folder that is kind of in the hierarchy on the directory tree on the same level instead of like one below. Yeah, let's bypass. Let's actually read the plan. I'm interested in what it read, because it will take a while to a standalone project, so that's good. Multi-turn with tool calls, liquidrandom personas group in the conversational data to turn a self-con project on project with tumble, LLM conversion, validator, inspect data, audio, text only. Perfect. That's nice. PyProject .toml with all the dependency, liquidrandom in the version that we just published. PyPy. That doesn't say when it was last published. 9 minutes ago. I don't think so. I think we need to refresh this page. It's 36 minutes ago. And as well as a couple of other things like Pyra for a Parquet saving rich library, because I think it got it from the upstream repository, because we specified there that we want to reuse the rich for data visualization. We didn't specify it here, so it's probably got it from the previous context. We should have added it anyway, because I think it's a nice tool and a nice Python package to visualize much better with color. At least I see color very nicely in that terminal. Already this one also uses color, by the way. So actually nice tool. And then it specifies how to implement this cool pick random variation for each tool, combine the tools, drop random, create shuffle copy for the real keep on saving, generate conversation single call that prompted generates persona, shuffle conversations tool call, generate the queue non-create tool separately. Nice, the domain and scenario, that will be overblown in terms of specificity. But fine. Validate, again, is really nice. Return the dict and the validate conversation is amazing generation with number of samples with the batch size output directory. Inspect, this is very important, because even though we have LLMs and it's written by Cloud Code, quality inspection by humans is really where we haven't fully automated yet, and this is probably not what because it becomes a problem of the specifications basically, as a machine in the machine learning setting, the data is a specification in machine learning setting, validation data, and uses async, rich, Parquet schema, sample dear persona tool, conversation, trace and string, turn list, num turns, num tools, inspect data, perfect. Async single variation index, nice, blah blah blah, specified in the cloud. This model is great, and there it implemented. Not done yet. I ran into some issues. I think it has to do with the UV packaging. It should figure this out. I don't care. I think it's done. Is it? Great, it's done. It says num sample batch size 16 UV run generate in this audio. So you can open a new tab. Let's see if it created a new source. Let's load this file, UV sync. Everything in there. We didn't need the UV run, you can't just run Python. Generate samples. Samples, let's just generate exactly 16 samples with a batch size of 16. Because we anyway, we want to generate 16 samples and inspect them anyway afterwards, I assume there will be some issue with the data. Not just data, but something's wrong here. Well, just copy and paste it. Is this an issue in your code or the package, the liquidrandom? Because it crashed in liquidrandom, right? Or is it just random cause? Nope. Let's fix it now. This is not. It should. Bam. Right. Tool variation 0. List index out of range. There's a tool with 0 variations. I assume so. All right. What does it say? Some tools have empty variation list. That's interesting. So it's probably a data issue. We should maybe have fixed this in the upstream one. That's quite interesting, but a tool that has 0 variations. Skip tool with, okay, anyway. We should maybe make an update in the to-do that we had up in the other repo. Let's actually add it directly. go upstream. Let's manually go into the README and go to the bottom. We have the future as like tool groups, tools with empty variation list. Check currently. Check if empty. And potentially skip. Perfect. Okay, done. Took quite a while to generate 16 samples, so we'll probably need to run this like overnight to generate a sufficient number, but it has generated some that we can now inspect. Whoop. Let's go up there, and there was actually some inspect data tool that we can use. Script. Great. Stephen Edwards, like a persona, available tools, scan confidential boundaries, compute, recommend, evaluate, incident report, analyze these parameters. That's good enough. User. So I'm getting up the vault for my new QR project. Complexity is an 8. Integrity is 9. Availability is a 7. I can definitely help you with the security assessment. Let me compute the protection mandates based on those CIS scores for you. Compute protection mandates. Okay, there's a tool response. That's quite interesting. Completely forgot about this. Okay, thanks. What if a breach happens? So it's just calls tool, but there's no response actually. That's interesting. So there's only 4 turns. There's 2 tools called status unlabeled. And there's another tool call. So there's no injected tool, like a non-tool call that you wanted to inject. So let's go to the next one. Persona, a different persona, different set of tools. Here we have 4 tools. Can check the card telemetrics. I think it's blah blah blah. It's on UID. Sure, let me fetch the power on the device. Cloud device UID. Doesn't respond to anything. So this is big issues. But here, thanks. How does short ignition goes to the yes? Yeah, there's like no tool response actually. This is interesting. There's a big missing thing that we forgot. So sure, I'll check this out. Okay, just let me know when the report is finalized. I'll confirm this is again something like that. So that looks very strange conversation to be honest. I think there's maybe too much seeding going on. Noise is paused. Okay, a couple of things that we need to fix. One, tool response. There should be an additional conversation turn type tool with role tool that returns in JSON format the response, the actual response of the tool. In the conversation generation process, this should be included in the generation, in the prompt and the generation, as well as the validation. The unrelated is quite too specific, too much randomness. Just use a single seed data item, not multiple, and prompt LM that generates the QA pair, that the question should be simple and the data just for context, for overall context. The context can be very specific, but the question should be simple, but around the theme of the context. The number of tools looks a bit narrow. Drop fewer tools and sample tool groups. Maybe. Also, I make sure to inject enough QA pairs and that they are at the right spot. E.g., no two user turns after. You do the turns after another. Also make sure sometimes the very first turn is an unrelated turn. Okay, that should give it enough context to fix it. Especially the tool response, I think, needs to be more consideration. I think we can just remove rf output. Let's just remove the output directory, wipe it, and let it fix this thing. Yeah, I think this was actually incorrectly specified. We'll ask it afterwards. This is exactly why we need the manual generation step, because even though the prompt includes very detailed stuff that we want to use open router with the concurrency and so on, that is fast, we always miss one thing that's not there. Like, for instance, the tool response. Obviously, thought this is implicitly already like assumed by the model that it will like always have a tool response and then their successive turn, because the user response depends on the tool response, right? Then what the user asks the second questions. But this is was not, since I didn't explicitly specify it, but implicitly assumed that it will do this. It didn't do this, basically. So now it seems to be implementing those fixes, and then we can do the generation again. All right, great. So that's then, it seems to be updated. Let's generate again 16 with batch size 16. This again will take a while, I think. Okay, it's done. It's completed now. The 16 samples at least. Interestingly, there's some that have failed. I assume because some of the checks failed, therefore it discarded the entire sample. But I will check this out later. For now, we need to inspect the data to see whether a lot of the issues that we observed before have been fixed. Persona, tools. So this time we have 5 tools instead of the previous one. They were like a bit lower, like on the lower end. It's already a first step improvement. Hello, I need to release, this is a filler word, that's great. Hello, I need to release info for SLR, blah, blah, blah. It does the tool call and the stuff. It has a tool response. The system shows version 2. That's amazing. So like, what happens when the cell tries to break down those lipid droplets? A bit too narrow in my opinion, especially there's no context here. Like, those lipid droplets, like, why does not the context? This needs to be fixed. But this assistant turn, like the tool response, check the upgrade for it. This is great. Like, it asks the model, it does this assistant, blah blah blah. The tool calling is done nicely. Here we have another with 4 tools this time. Again on the lower end. I don't know what it drops. I think it drops the 0 to 2 per tool group and not overall. So this is another thing that we need to fix. So I heard this tower vaccines. That's great. Again, tool response. equipment for the move is PT. Okay, the port is Islamabad International Airport, so it has Pakistan, so that's actually great. The rest seems good. Let's check one final sample. Again, there's some cell receptors. This is also, again, an unrelated tool. That cell receptor, again, like it refers to the context that is actually then not in the final. So in the data generation process, the context, the CDNA stuff, data, information is in the context, so it refers in the synthesized QA pair to that context, which is then not present anymore. The context is not present anymore in the final conversation, so this needs to be fixed. Here we have a ton of tools, like what's happening here? Wow, like this is a lot. Okay, but I think the very first example here that was actually quite nice, where we'll go with like this, the lipids. Okay, nice. Following good improvement. There are still a few minor issues. E.g., look at this QA pair. E, the user term, refers to the context, the seed context, e.g. those. What's it like? Let's use it, those lipid droplets. Which feels out of context, out of place. Update the QA pair generation prompt to include an example of a QA pair that feels natural. E.g., there is no context that is referred to but feels natural. Another question for the tool group selection and dropping of tools. Are you dropping for each tool group 0 to 2 tools or overall? If I want overall dropping, not per tool group, and target distribution in terms of tool quantity for each generated sample of 1 to 15 tools. That's really enough. So again, like this, the tool response was implemented, was fixed. Seems quite good. I like it. The QA turn, not so much. There's still like this implicit context stuff there that we need to get rid of. And yeah, the number of tools is also a bit strange. Also, these tools are very interesting. Like they're very diverse. Like this thing is crazy, you know. Like, like we could generate like massive data with this. Like looks a bit unnatural already. Like nobody would call a tool like probe reservation exit constraints. Like it's crazy, but like obviously, like if you train a model with this data, like it will be become very robust to kind of any type of function that it should be called. At least for the simple case, like with the main limitation is tool group size of 4, and like the dependency between tools is very limited and so on. for that task, but it's going the right direction. So 2 changes. QA prompt added explicit good bad examples showing self-contained questions versus cross-context amongst the prompt. Now structure them to carry questions on their own using the problem. Perfect. Tool count distribution. Instead of per group dropping the tool dropping on the trim to the target of tool codes within. Yeah, I think it should be good. It should be good enough. All right. Instead of checking the data, like you could run through this process again, probably will take 10 minutes or so. Check again. I think I can assume that now it's done. Like I will skip this process. Usually, like you want to also like double check it to make sure that after the iteration it's still correct. It looks already like 99% there. Like only the QA stuff. It mentioned it fixed the stuff, so I'll not run it anymore. Like this is good enough. Next up, I want to add the audio portion because it's a key portion of the project. So what I will do is there's a thing called Chatterbox TTS Turbo. That's an open source model. You can, the first is GitHub and so on, Hugging Face. And there's a API provider, it's called Deep Infra, that offers this as an API quite decently, I would say. So we'll just go to the API. I already set the API. I have an API key for this, topped up to kind of a few $100 or so. And let's go use the OpenAI API, this one. It basically generates text speech, like Deep Infra token, the Deep Infra token import response to the stuff. So we just copy paste this one, and we just copy paste this here into the prompt. And there's, I think, a list of voices, exactly. Something random, fetching the voices. What's going on there? Voices. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with the website. Definitely not. Yeah, probably not a good provider, to be honest. What the hell? Let's check out if the voices are somewhere here visible. Put schema. What the hell? Seriously? Wow. This thing doesn't work. Crazy. Let me try to get the voices somewhere else. It worked like when I checked it out somewhere. I used this API, I think, a couple of times ago, months ago. And back then I remember there was like a few voices that we could use. Anyway, should be fine. So we have here exactly how to use it with the OpenAI API. You can assume the envar Deep Infra API key is set. Use the API to generate the speech data for each of the user turn. Make sure we support rate limiting with backoff that increases. What else should we add here? Read voices. I think we can actually upload our own voices there, but I think it had built-in voices. That's the thing. That's the crazy thing. Yep. It has MP3. Should we store it as MP3 or WAV? Like, it should be WAV. Save as WAV. Store as WAV. That should be fine. Basically, it's a text-to-speech converter. You can give the text to tests. There's also description, chatter boxes, and open channels. So on. It has like a laugh, cough, chuckle. That's a gimmick. Then what he uses this, you know. The versions, voices. Again, let's try the voices one more time. Unauthorized. So I need to be logged in a bit to work in this. So let me actually get the voices through my account. I think I logged in but on a different machine at some point like that. Okay, so I got the voices, copy pasted them. Here, iterate, randomly sample a voice for each conversation. So here. So we use this API. The API key is set. Use the above to generate speech for each turn. Make sure that we support rate limiting. Store as wave. Make sure the inspect data supports audio playback. So we can actually listen to it later on in the inspection portion, because we don't want to like have, again, bad data. Randomly sample the voice for each conversation. The back off. Let's go. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I copied, pasted, and you need to be logged in. Like I found the access somewhere to be logged in. It seems some of the voices have also language or something prefixed there. Not sure if this will be an issue. We'll anyway listen to the conversation afterwards to see whether this has been correctly described. So we have here the OpenAI, like API stuff. Needs to reset the base URL and should cook this stuff. Okay, what's doing now? And it's as generate audio CLI command. So it seems to be a separate command that just takes the conversation and turns it into one that has audio. At least that's how I interpreted it. We'll double check it. Let's see if it outputs in the description later on. Update, yeah, to add the generate audio command. Has a new package schema is great. This is whatever, generate. Now update the inspector to support audio playback. Verify everything works. Also, I can say yes, uses. So usually generate text conversations, non-text, batch size, generate audio, synthesis order for the user terms, and then you inspect it. So if I understand correctly, the generate consume text only packets and add audio. Just double check whether we have actually the right mindset for this. Yes, exactly. It will use synthesizer wave in turn and the audio same plus voice. You want to change it, you have to have with audio flex, so it's a single term in place enrichment that adds audio column and so on something like that. No, I think this process is nice because it allows you to inspect the conversations separately from the audio. So imagine we added this from the first step already, audio and speech and text on one step, without having the tool response, without having this context weird QA stuff, and the tool things on there. So the decision from us to separate the text only from the audio one already allowed us to be way more efficient to kind of inspect and fix a lot of the issues that kind of was implicitly assumed or like not assumed by the model, by the generation process. But it's enough. These two commands num samples, so this will be for all these files. So let's just copy this thing here, okay? Because as we see in the 16 samples with 16 batch sizes, it took already 10 minutes, so I want to like really make sure that this is running overnight or so. So what we'll do is create a run.sh, basically a shell script that has these two commands. So we'll have a batch size num samples, batch size of day2, let's add like 1,000 samples. It's a good starting point. And the audio with batch size 8. I think I would assume we'll get rate limited on DB infra way quicker than the open router. Especially since it's a chatterbox, I think it's a 350M model, so it should be fast to generate. But the concurrency of 8, I'm worried that we get rate limited. That's my main worry. But yeah, that should be fine. We generate 1,000 samples with batch size 32. It should take a bit, but it should be fine. And then we do generate the audio portion out of it. That should be fully fine, I think, for this. Great. And we can just execute this shell command and let it run. We deleted the old folder there, so which is nice. So that's why like we don't have the bad samples. Again, I would check the text only samples if I was really like had enough time for this. But he would just let this kind of run with the run sh source run sh. So it'll basically run, generating 1,000 samples with batch size 32, and then afterwards generate the parquet files. All right, that's it for the implementation. We'll just, similar to before, let it generate. It's quite slow, but it's because it's a long generation. There's a lot of stuff that's happening there. With the audio generation, we haven't actually listened to anything there, so that's why we really interested to kind of actually listen to the audio conversation and see how it looks like, how it listens like with the filler turns and so on. And yeah, I think 1,000 samples also would, like, in case this is already works out great from quality perspective. It's already like a starting data set already, like 1,000 samples, not too much, but like it gets us already in the right trajectory. So yeah, that's it. We'll let it run, and I will be back when we have some results, some first results on how the actual samples turn out to be. Great. I had one minor issue. Great. I had one more issue. Well, it was just minor and I fixed it. Let's check it out. So it did crash, and I just posted this message into Cloud Code to fix it. It was basically this empty tool calls that we observed before causing some issues. Similar, like basically certain tool groups, variations are just empty. We should have been filtering this out in the future already during the generation process. It didn't, but like it should be fine. Just skipping those samples, restarted it, setting the API key and so on. That was not set properly. But I fixed it. It's not exposed also here. That's also very important. So you don't steal my API key. But we have the first samples here, conversation, park it. And there's this inspect data script that we can use, and it should support audio as far as it has, at least this is what we specified in the prompt. So it's just only inspecting the text only version. So I think if you, sorry, there was an input path or something. Let's check out the help script again. Actually, input dir set to set output / with audio. See if it plays anything. Okay, doesn't produce any output, which is bad because we should double check really with the audio that it's working correctly and everything. We do double check. The one thing that we also should check is the text only version, because like we made some minor change, but we didn't recheck the output, because I assumed it will be fine because it was like iteration number 3 and was very close to where we wanted to be. Analyze feedback, check feedback or tool response, some other turn, some other tool call, time zone, other tool call. Yeah, looks good overall, but the audio player seems not working. Audio player does not seem to work. Oh, token has expired. You need to log in. All right, I'm back. We logged in again, and let's see whether I can fix the audio issue there, because I really want to listen to the whatever has been played. I think you probably need to install something. FF plays available. The issue is which is not finding in ever suppress failing. Let me check. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of these packages for audio playing, Linux, Mac, and Windows probably have very different paths on actually playing audio. And having one package that supports all of them is probably not super easy to do or not scalable. So I'll just make sure it fixes it, at least it works on my machine. It seems to be the L, some default view on without playing. If you press L, it should listen. We'll double check this. So there's a conversation here. We have the tools, the persona that we sampled to seed the process, the tool. I was wondering if you could help me check binding equipment. Of course, blah, blah, blah. I can see more user audio available. Let's press L.
Hello. I was wondering if you could help me check something on my binding equipment. The motion sensor seems a bit sensitive lately. It triggers too often when I'm working. So like when I'm cutting the paper for my journals, is there a specific way to choose the tool to keep the edges clean? Yes, please. But I want to keep it detailed enough so I don't miss when someone needs help nearby. Maybe we can set it to about 5% false positive rate?
That sounded quite interesting. Quality is quite good. Maybe it feels a bit unnatural, like there's way more pauses, more variation in natural language, probably. But since we're already fine-tuning a pre-trained model and not training one from scratch, probably should be able to adapt and like adjust accordingly. So it's mostly used for steering. For pre-training this with data like this is probably not diverse enough, just from the monotonicity of the spoken text. But even the field words and so on, and like some of the pronunciations and so on, it's not too bad. Like I like that sample. Let's do another one.
Hello. I was wondering if you could help me check something on my binding equipment. The motion sensor seems a bit sensitive lately.
Okay, this is the same thing. It seems to replay the same again. This is a motion sensor again or not? Yeah, binding equipment. Let's skip the binding equipment. Next sample. I think we need to press enter to go to the next sample.
Hey, can you analyze my feedback? I wrote great job and metrics were up. Received state is October 25. Use engine B2, 0. Okay, please archive this. Shard is NGU ZZ Token is C5678. And mark it as positive. I also need to fix my time zone for Coyoacan. Dialing code is +52. Transaction ID is NAT 2023 OZN1. So do you think slowing down to reflect actually helps your creativity, or does it just waste time? Thanks. That's all for today.
Sounds very similar to the previous one, yeah. Next one. L. Play.
So I need to set up a crypto receivable for the expat grant. The merchant reference is grant fund 001.
I like the filler words, like this and so on. It adds a bit of like some variation and not just, you know, like monotonically, like just text to speech the entire thing. Probably could do even more. I think it's currently very biased towards the start of the sentence to add the filler words. Could be like spread around the entire thing, especially between sentences while like you probably the person is still thinking and so on. One major issue that I have with this data that I'm interested to see whether you actually also had the same observations. Like we had like 3 samples that we listened to. All of them use the same voice. And that's not what we specified. With the I told it to randomize the voice with the pre-built voices that, if you remember from the first part of the video, you cannot see the voices until you log in to Deep Infra for some reason. But I told him to iterate these different voices, but he uses always the same. So I just listened to these 3 samples, or re-listened to the 3 samples. All of them seem to use the same voice. Let me double check and maybe go through quicker to see, because we have 128 samples, by the way. Like I actually reduced it. I set it to 1K samples. I reduced it to 128 samples just to make it quicker, because it crashed overnight and so on, and then I restarted it, and just going through with 128 samples, that's enough. So this is the first sample, all about the binding equipment. Let's skip this one. This is one is the same voice, Number 3 is also the same voice. Number 4.
So, do you think
Same
the
voice
old
again.
ways of keeping track are safer than the new ones for work? Well, can you check my calendar registry from 2024-05-20 to 2024-05-22? I have the lawyer meeting on my schedule. Well, I was wondering how reindeer managed to stay strong when there was not much food. You know, like during the worst winters. That is good. Well, I will go joik to heal the land after I fix the fence.
Next one.
Hey, I'm working on a latency test
Yes,
for
it's
my...
definitely always the same sample. I don't know, like always the same voice. Let's ask Claude. It seems after listening to the audio, to the speech, to the audio, I have this following observation. 1, the filler words are really nice, but currently clustered around start. Add more and sprinkle them in also during the conversation, here and there. So we just want to like blah blah blah, like stutter and so on. Like yeah, that's very natural. Even myself, a lot of filler words, a lot of pauses and so on. That's nice. Actually, like maybe like a lot of TTS models, if you have like 2 new lines or something, or like say 2 spaces, also it also pronounces this actually with a pause. Let's also test 2 spaces as a pause. Sometimes don't overdo it at all. Number 2, it uses always the same voice. I thought we added the randomization on the list of voices I provided. Please double check. Okay. So the first one should be easy to fix. It's probably just a bit of prompting and so on that you, when you generate the sample, generate the example conversation and the prompt in the conversation generation, just make sure that it also includes a couple of more filler words during a conversation and those kind of things. So it should be very easily to fixable, but also like the additional diversification on the data will be limited. Just a couple of filler words here and there shouldn't be too difficult, but like it's definitely something we should do because it's easy to do. but I don't expect huge gains or huge robustness improvements on the model, because as I mentioned, like we're using synthetic voices, which are very narrowly focused, very narrow band. So it would be interesting to, which leads to point 2, which is like the same voice. If you have, like, just even with synthetic voices, if you have like 30 different synthetic voices, it's still a very narrow band of distributions. So it will only work for fine tuning and adjustment, and not for pre-training, because there you have like, you need to have much more diversity. But having just one voice will be like very catastrophic. This will be really bad. So 2 changes: double pauses, filler words. Okay, on the voice issue, the data confirms all 60 voices are being randomized correctly. You may have been hearing similar sounding English voices. Some of the non-English voices, which are not really different. Is the voice used in the TTS saved in the Parquet file? So we can actually inspect it, because I want to actually, when you inspect it, we may also listen to the voice, like read the voice. Yes, the voice column is saved in the audio Parquet. It's not saved in text only. In the inspect script, please show the voice ID. It already shows the voice. It already shows the voice, but I think without color, right? But only if audio is. Let me check voice fit exists, which couple audio. Okay, great. So it should actually show the voice. Let's check it out. We have here, yeah, voice. Where's it here? Sorry, was already here in the first place. Just too lazy to read. Vivian's voice. So this is a Vivian voice. Let's go to the next one. And we have here GF Alpha, so a different voice ID. Next one, Aura. Next one, another one, interesting. AM Echo. Daniel, that's interesting. This is a male voice, so I want to listen to this one, because this should be male. Like if this is again a female voice.
Hello. I need to check my studio booking.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the audio. Checking there. Let's go to Deep Infra. Probably need to log in. Versions API. I think you can upload, read voice, and so on there. Interesting. Just copy this one, the snippet, it's nice. Alright, it's the first time to code ourselves, you know, no, without a coding model. Test voice.py. So far, we only used Claude Code. But the first time coding myself is quite interesting. For voice in non. Where did I get the old list of noises? Let's Claude Code it. Read. I created this file, what's it called, test voice. I read and update it to iterate over all voices and save as MP3 with file name containing the voice ID in the in some debug output folder. Yeah, I could code this myself, but like let's just, because the list of voices that it's actually using, I copy pasted it because I had it on a different machine where I logged in and have the credentials. It has already the context there, so let's add this stuff there. Test voice. It will debug output voice ID mp3. So we need to source the virtual environment, and then we have the test voices. Creating Luna. Quartz allow Bella. Okay, this should be good enough. How to play. It's not clockwork. How to play a sound in the terminal. I want to open the folder and so on. I want to stay in the terminal. Probably there are some tools that play this. Let's just ask the chatbot. ffplay, no disk audio upsync. This is interesting stuff.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Okay, this is Luna. And then we have Jessica Bella Allo Hardcore or Quartz.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumped.
It does sound slightly different, but it's like minimally different.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
It's like it sounds slightly, but like barely.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Nah, I'm not sure. Let's just generate more voices. Okay, let's just generate. It had the issue like with the male voice. Like if the male voice ID is generating the same voice as the other one, then it's an issue. Nicole Nova. It's difficult to say if this is female or male voice, right? Sky. This is a male voice. Adam. Now, first time we have something that definitely should be a male voice. There's the Adam, Adam or something it's called, right?
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Definitely not an Adam. Okay, I think we have reached some issue here. Let me log into the deep infra and see the documentation for the API, because I think it doesn't show the full docs, the full voice ID. So I think I really need to log in, and so let me get the credentials. Okay, I played around a bit with the voice, changing the voice type, and ran into major issues. So I created even my own voices that I uploaded some sample. Here it is, voice 1, voice 2, and so on, and a couple of other voices that I uploaded with like some recorded MP3 and so on. It does not actually change the voice, so it's always the same female voice. So I think I just gave up on DB Infra. I think that's just not there. But interestingly, I found this other place, replicate, that has the same model with, I think, also a couple of built-in voices. And maybe that should work better. So let's go to the Python one, and we just copy paste this thing there. Whoop. Let's go to Cloud Code and say, let's move from deep infra to replicate. You can remove any mentioning. You can remove any dependency. Then see regarding infra. You can assume the infra replicate API key is set. The voices Let's go here. They had for here a couple of voices, but this is not selectable. I don't know how to actually get the voices here. What the hell is this? Yeah, there's some options there. Let's click here, copy inner HTML, copy element. Let's just, if I post this here, select what's it. It's actually nice. Let's just copy and dump directly this into the context of. Yeah, that's enough. Let's just see what it does. So I think it does read the prior project download. It removes probably the OpenAI. No, it will not, because we need it for the LLM generation part. Let it cook. We probably need to also update the test voices or something like that. It was just some testing. There's a test voice script that we created and ask it to kind of actually visualize, or like not visualize, but play or generate MP3s for these different voices. So probably we need to also listen to that before. I'm more positive that it will work without running the same issue there. But yeah, that's why the human loop checking is so important, because even these providers and so on don't check actually the model output correctly. Like that's what it happened here, basically. Interesting. Some compatibility issues with Python 3.14. That's interesting. Wow, I barely see this, but I think they have HTTP here. I think there's a new by the way. By the way. It's a new command that has been added, I think, with Cloud Code recently. I see your curl example. It actually seemed to have helped. It seemed to have helped actually. The URL, replicate models, resemble chatbox. Predictions, interesting. So yeah, it seemed to have like there's a new command from Cloud Code that you can, instead of interrupting, you can use this by the way, which is nice. It seems to have actually helped it by changing the URL slightly. Okay, then let's ask, have you also updated the inspect, or like, how is it not inspect, the test voices? Okay, great, amazing. We can just use the test voices. Let's remove the debug. Test voices. Replicate API token is not set. Okay, I think the issue was that it uses the environment variable API token instead of API key for some reason. So let's try it again. Source fish environment and use the test voices, creating error. Here we go. This one we can close. Sorry. How to play the audio again in the terminal. So it created 1, 2, 3 already. Meanwhile, we can use this one. Okay, that's enough. 4 audio, if they're all the same.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
This is definitely a male voice, so there's
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy.
also this is a female, this is nice, and then
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
that sounds very different. Amazing, that's great. And then Andy.
The quick brown fox jumped over.
Perfect, I think that's good enough. Right, voice has been checked, so I think we're back to the generation of, there was a script, a shell script that we had there, that basically takes the already generated yeah, exactly. What we need to do is we need to delete the audio folder. So we have the text only one, and then there are one, if you call this function now, it converts the text only to audio plus text. Rate limiting should be already added there. So let's just run this. Okay, great. So what we did now is like we changed from the deep infra because it did not support changing the audio, sorry, changing the voice. All voices on the predefined list, as well as uploading my own one, did not change the audio at all. It always was this female voice, the same one. So we moved from replicate to, we moved from deep infra to replicate, which supports also this Chatterbox Turbo open source model and has also built-in voices, quite an extensive list. And we validated that it actually generates different voices. So now we are regenerating, so we deleted the data from the previous one that had like always with the same voice, and are now regenerating with this new voice, this voice variations there. So this will probably take a while. So I think especially the generation took a bit longer, I think, with replicate than with the deep infra. But since this runs overnight or so, over a couple of days, like overnight, it shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, let's check back when this has been completed, so that we have our first batch of data. All right, so I'm back. I let this run for a couple of days, and I have some mixed results. So let's check it out. So it did complete. It generated 137 out of 150 samples. And that seems a good starting point. The only issue that I observed is that I got rate limited by basically saying, hey, we can only do 6 TTS requests per minute or something like that, per minute, if you have less than $5 in our credits. And I checked out, and I have like more than enough credits to not run into this issue. I'm not sure, like also it stopped printing these issues. So maybe it was resolved and just at the beginning. I don't know. Let's anyway, it's fine. So I think we stopped by just examining the data, if I remember correctly, where we have again test voice. Okay, let's just ask what does it say? Do we have? There was a script. Exactly, inspect data with the audio folder. It prints, first of all, the stuff with the tools in the system prompt, the persona that we used for the generation, a user prompt, and then we have the assistant doing a function call, and then some assistant to enrich nice. I think L, we can actually speak it if I'm not mistaken.
Hello. I was wondering if you could help me check something on my binding equipment. The motion sensor seems a bit sensitive lately. It triggers too often when I'm working. So like when I'm cutting the paper from my journals, is there a specific way to choose the tool to keep the edges clean? Yes, please. But I want to keep it detailed enough so I don't miss when someone needs help nearby. Maybe we can set it to about 5% false positive rate.
That was great. Now we need to check whether it's the same voice in the second example.
Hello. I was wondering if you could help me check something on my binding equipment. The motion sensor seems a bit sensitive lately.
It speaks the same thing again. Sorry, that was my fault. So the first sample, we now know this is this female voice with the binding equipment. Exactly. I think we have to press enter to go to the next sample, and then L. L does actually like always speak the same thing.
Hey, I'm starting new audio tests for the Mercado Libre interface today. Can you set a visual wait condition for the main loading spinner? It uses the selector number loading overlay. Okay, good. So yeah, the Starlink connection is stable today, which is good. Just need to keep in mind the latency for the accessibility timing. So I was wondering, like, what actually controls the speed of a chemical reaction? Right, now I need to resolve the DAG for the current audit pipeline run though. Commit hash is A1B to C3, pipeline is AML voice access, version 5. Do you think auditors ever actually read all the rules they are supposed to check? It feels like some people just sign off without looking. Okay, now I need to set up the session for the payment flow test. Merchant ID is 998877, cart is cart 456. Set the window to 30 minutes. So like, how does the computer actually know which processor should handle a task first? Okay, everything's ready. I need to commit the fulfillment for node alpha. Node ID is alpha node. Signature is SIGZY timestamp 2023, 11-2023, 20 Vounce, 0Z.
Wow, that was quite interesting. There's a lot of things that come together in this example. First of all, it's quite long, like very long multi-turn. That's, I think, very nice data to make sure that the model learns to stay, keep the context. That's a good thing. We also saw that it's kind of has these filler words there, so it's not bad. Also, what's quite noticeable is kind of this unrelated questions that we ask specifically to add like with certain random chance, like for instance this chemical reaction stuff. So basically just a random unrelated question, so do not bias the model to always, you know, like, hey, there are tools available and every question I expect it to be about the tools, but it's like some random stuff as well, so the model doesn't get confused, that doesn't overfit into becoming like I need to call a function in every single iteration. And also we saw a bit, at least in my opinion, that the tools may be a bit detached from each other. Like that's why like this maybe we need to fix the tool group sampler just to make sure that our tools group size a bit bigger and like there's some dependency between them that actually can be used and by in the synthetic data generation pipeline. But it's quite interesting. I think it was really nice, like long, like multi-turn. There's some filler words there. Obviously, you can always add more noise and perturbations and stuff later on in the training pipeline, in the data loader pipeline. Always multi-turn, several tool calls that have been made, unrelated questions. So I think overall, like this was actually a nice sample. Let's check the third one. If this one has a different voice and also looks good, I think we can.
Hey, can you check the logistics audit trail? Vendor prefix is DE and suffix is 88291. So like, do you think extended warranties are actually worth the extra money? Okay, good. My parents were waiting for that order, so I'm relieved. Just glad work is going smoothly. So like, how do painters manage to capture such intense natural detail in their work? Yeah, I code generative art too, but I need to work. Region code is DE and account is 442. Percentage is 90 with time 2023, 23, 23, 27, 23, 80. All right, thanks. Got to get back to my studio for the rest of the shift.
I think it was interesting, this conversation turn where it's like it asks an unrelated question about printers. It's about layering, color grading and so on, and then it asks, yeah, I need to code generate R2, but I need to go back to work and then ask for a function call, for a tool call. I think this looks, at least that's how I interpret this. It's not too bad, I think. It's actually might be useful in practice, I think, having data like that.
Well, so I've been wondering, how do folks make sure they keep what they earn when the rules keep changing? Hi, the system feels slow today. Can you check stats for the Sami corridor service? It's on tenant land, watch, and production. I want to see the last 30 minutes. Do you think changing the way a town store looks actually helps the people there? Or is it just for show? And, well, are any tables stuck? Check tables with corridor in the name. If they're locked for over 5 minutes, let me know.
Hello there. I'm Gwendolyn Francisco. I make beautiful rugs from our traditional methods. The river water we use gives them a special quality. Oh well, sometimes I worry about my online orders coming through properly. Could you help me check if our connection is working okay? Well, do you think it's a problem if a project turns out just a little different than the plan?
Okay. okay, this is the first male voice. Also, like again, like I think we fixed the issue of like having the diversified voices, the filler words there. Then the conversation feels also quite natural. Like it at least not 100% human source, but at least some unrelated mixing and related questions for tool calls and so on. So I think overall I'm quite happy with the data set. It might the limiting factor might be the size, that we only have like 130 samples so far. So I will maybe use this to generate more data, but probably first fix a couple of the tool calling things, seed data generation type stuff that we had there. But like overall, I think it's definitely usable that we can scale this data pipeline for generating more data to have like a function calling, audio function calling capabilities with our models. All right, this concludes this third part of the video series. Again, like in the first part episode, we created liquidrandom, a package for seed data generation. In the second episode, we added tool groups as for MCP servers, tool functions, and so on for the agents. In episode 3, this one, we actually used this tool for the first time to generate audio function calling there, where basically a user speaks and the model responds with text only and function calls. So basically having a model that has tools available and interprets the user actions in both text, either text form and also in a speech, in a spoken form. We ran into a couple of issues specifically since like for static data generation on like the text portion, there's like plenty of models out there, including our own, that can be used for this. But for the audio portion, it becomes quite tricky because there are some very nice open source text-to-speech models out there that we can use through API. The details become very tricky. We ran into issues with the first provider, a Deep Infra, where you were not able to change the voices, even if I uploaded my own MP3 and WAV files with different voices that I recorded myself from different people and so on. This did not affect actually anything. So that's why something is fundamentally broken with certain API providers. And then we switched to Replicate, which supported the different voices for this Chatterbox Turbo open source models that we use for this generation. Main issue here was, I think, with the getting rate limited to like 6 per minute or something like that, which is really low. I topped up the credit there. I think it's gone now, hopefully at least. If this becomes an issue, I will maybe contact them and or directly post on social media like, hey, fix those things, it's a big issue. But overall, I think not too bad. Like you can top up the credits there, and like it was acquired by Cloudflare, I think, they Replicate. So overall, and Cloudflare is doing quite nice, I think, in the domain. We are using it. I'm using it intensively in Liquid as well. Like we have a lot of workload there. So usually they usually do this stuff right. In the next episode, so we generated like of this audio function calling data only around 130 samples, which is very low. Like this is not good enough for full fine tuning. I'll probably generate more and upload the data at some point to be used, because I think it has some really nice characteristics that can be useful, especially for fine tuning if you don't need like massive amount of data, but just a bit of tweaking. A couple of issues I think that we ran into had to do with like the liquidrandom repository that we created in episode 1 and 2. That the tools, the stuff that we discussed before, like they are a bit. The tool group size is very small, already 3 and so on. So, and also there's some interface drift. Additionally, on the other types of seed data that we have, some of them are too specific, that we had to actually prompt the model a couple of times to actually tone down and be like very high level overview. Like for instance, the chemical reaction. The first questions that we saw in the very first sample was really like chemical reaction with this, molecule and this type of reaction causes and so on, like very complex, very detailed, that no typical human would like ask. It's good for getting the model to know about this stuff. So if you are working in a distillation process, but it feels very unnatural in the conversation, and this was actually our main concern there. So we had to really like prompt the model to say, hey, even though you get this persona that's very specific, actually don't use it, just get as an inspiration source, like roughly the topic size. So it's definitely something that required manual intervention, and like if you want to really automate stuff, we need to make sure that the seed data generation type on the standard response from it is like covers like 80%, 90% of the sum of the use case. Like if you generate like a SFT data set, a fine-tuned data set, we're talking about here about a few thousands to kind of low 100,000 samples, like 1,000 to 100,000, usually like what we consider like fine-tuning data sets. And so we make sure that, within those categories we have enough diversity, but like not over specifically, such that it becomes weird and unnatural, because that would basically have like our fine-tuning data set having a distribution that doesn't match really like how actually users are and using the model in the end. So yeah, overall, this concludes the third episode. We used our liquidrandom package to generate audio to function calling data. And yeah, a lot of stuff that needs to be done. I will probably also, as I mentioned before, generate more data and upload it at some point. But yeah, this is definitely like to give you a high-level overview of like, okay, how does a process look like if you would like build like some of these data sets and really work with a distillation mindset of saying, hey, we can use existing models out there kind of to help us solve the task of getting the right data. All right, then hopefully you enjoyed and learned something from this episode, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.